Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm Anne Morgan. I'm one of the consultant rheumatologists in Leeds, and I guess I've been asked to do this because I'm the musculoskeletal theme lead for the Leeds BRC, and I'm also one of the co-directors with Hemant for the Welcome Forward North Health Professional PhD scheme. And I was also on the Versus Arthritis Fellowships panel for 7 years. So I guess that's my background. Um, Sorry, it's not changing. So we were asked to give a little bit of our own personal journeys in our clinical academic careers as an example of where you may get different support and mentorship over the first few years. So I had a fairly traditional clinical academic career. I intercalated as during my medical degree, and in my second SHO post I rotated into rheumatology, which was a very academic department in Leeds, and I got great support from the senior clinicians there, and particularly Howard Bird. And I wrote a number of reviews with Howard. And I then subsequently did some work on a project grant with Howard Bird and tried to get a PhD fellowship and was unsuccessful. And I took up a registrar job. And then we had a clinician scientist who moved to Leeds from Cambridge, who is John Isaacs, who many of the rheumatologists will know. And so he was quite early in his own career, and had a strong interest in immunology, which had been something that had interested me throughout medical school. And again, I worked on an Arthritis Research UK project grant for a year. And from that, I got some great data and then applied for a formal MRC Clinician Scientist Fellowship, Clinical Training Fellowship. And my supervisors for that fellowship were John Isaacs and Sir Alex Markham. I managed over the 2-year MRC fellowship to have 2 periods of maternity leave, and then in the time when I was doing my research, there wasn't any further episodes for research. I was up to within 18 months of getting my CCT, and I went straight from my clinical training fellowship into a Versus Arthritis Clinician Scientist Fellowship, again supported by John Isaacs and Alex Markham, who were then moving from that role as a supervisor to a sponsor for my postdoctoral fellowship. My Clinician Scientist Fellowship was one of the first that was awarded jointly with the Academy of Medical Sciences, which gave me the opportunity to have a senior fellow from the Academy of Medical Sciences as a mentor. And I took up that opportunity, and I was delighted when Sir Mark Walport agreed to be my mentor. And this was just about as the time when Mark was taking up his role at the Wellcome Trust. I then, within the first year of my Clinician Scientist Fellowship, John and Alex both left Leeds, and my next fellowship, which was a HEFCE Clinical Senior Lectureship, was supported by Paul Emery. This particular post doesn't exist more, and I guess the NIHR Research Professorship fills that role. And towards the end of this clinical senior lectureship, I was awarded a personal chair. And so, throughout this time, I had one formal mentor, but everybody who had supervised and sponsored me took up that more informal role of mentorship later, sponsorship or mentorship later in my career. And that included Paul Stewart in more recent years, who I collaborated with research, but also provided a lot of ongoing support. And throughout the time I stayed at the University of Leeds, so I very much trained in an era where you were expected to travel around the country, around the world. Well, my family circumstances were such, I have literally been in Leeds for the whole of my career, so it is possible to do that. I mean, the structure now for clinical academic careers is very different. I guess I ended up creating my own ACF type post, and there was no ACL post, so you had to go straight from your PhD into a clinician scientist fellowship. So I've been asked to say a little bit about the different types of mentorship available. So I guess what I've illustrated is that sort of combination of formal mentorship and informal mentorship. And both are very helpful. So with formal mentorship, this really takes place within a specific framework and a specific organisational context. And the matching between the mentee and mentor is usually performed by an organisational lead. And this is usually for a very defined period of time, and both the mentee and mentor are trained within the mentorship scheme. Informal is a lot more about those relationships you develop over many years, and quite often that's something that isn't enforced, and you self match in many ways. And there's much more flexibility in terms of the time commitment. Another type of mentorship, which you don't see so much now, is peer-to-peer mentorship. And I was a mentor of this type of scheme that the Academy of Medical Sciences ran many years ago. And there they tended, it was designed for clinical PhD students, and you had a group of people from the same specialty. So I performed peer-to-peer mentorship with a lot of rheumatologists in training during their PhDs, and the aim was that you'd got people from different institutions, and you were facilitating a support mechanism where the PhD students supported each other. And many of those have gone on and got got clinician scientist fellowships, and some of that group have now got their own chairs. So in terms of the mentorship programs available, each organisation will usually have a local scheme. At the University, I've given an illustration of the one from the University of Leeds, and there's normally a formal approach to apply for the scheme. So within the University of Leeds, you'll be able to sort of look for the OD and PL leadership skills training, and that will give you access to that scheme. For the NIHR, there are a number of national schemes. So one of these is the NIHR, and this is really designed for people late on in their PhDs or in their early postdoctoral journey. And you'll be able to find more about this on the NIHR website. So from the NIHR perspective, they aim to support interdisciplinary collaboration and to look at matching people from a complementary professional background. And this is a good opportunity to develop sort of relationships with people from outside your host institution. And also the NIHR provide a whole range of resources and professional development events when you registered on this scheme. For UKRI, there's not as much available at the moment. There's a really nice report that was produced by the BBSRC which particularly for people who aren't clinicians, is well worth looking at. The MRC are reviewing a lot of their career structures at the moment, and I suspect there will be more to follow from the MRC. The scheme I've got much more knowledge of is the one from the Academy of Medical Sciences, and this is where I got my own mentor, Professor Sir Mark Walport. So with the Academy of Medical Sciences, this is at a postdoctoral level, but for both clinicians and basic sciences. And there's a whole host of information on the Academy of Medical Sciences website that's well worth looking at. So the Academy of Medical Sciences, there's probably will be a little bit different to the NIHR. It's very much a developmental model of mentorship that they propose. So I think the more traditional model that, you know, to some extent I experienced is that the mentor would have some sort of hierarchical influence over the mentee and their career progression, and it was very much grounded about giving advice and guidance, and that, you know, centered around acquisitions of skills or knowledge, and the learning tended to be more one way in that type of model with a focus on great advice. But the Academy of Medical Sciences really advocate a different model of mentorship called developmental mentoring, and this is which is giving someone the skills to take charge of their own development. And so the mentor may be more experienced in a particular area, but would be completely independent of the mentee's direct personal and sort of professional life. And the focus is on allowing the mentee to discover their own wisdom, learn how to do things for themselves, and you're not necessarily trying to impart knowledge. And there's a recognition that this is two ways, and there's the opportunity for mutual growth and learning. And the main focus is on the development of the mentee and developing their personal journey. And it's about asking those sort of good questions, those challenging questions. And this type of mentoring means that you would tend to address difficult issues as they arise, and so it takes time to develop these types of relationships. There's no line of accountability. You're not necessarily working in the same area, so there's no bias in terms of the discussions that you would have with your mentor. And, you know, I think we have to appreciate that, you know, the mentors, there's a lot of generosity of time, and it's really important to get the most out of these, that you take charge of your learning. So this is about your own personal development. You know, it doesn't matter how senior you are, you're always in some form of transition with your own career. And so seeking a mentor throughout your career is a really good way to get some input of someone who's independent and not non-judgmental, to help you negotiate what lies ahead. So I think some really important values of mentorship, whichever scheme you do, is neutrality. You want someone who has no agenda other than to support you and just take a completely fresh look at the sort of various decisions you're going to be making. It needs to be non-directional, and you really want someone who's supportive but is really going to challenge you, someone who asks you the right questions and really allows you to find your own solution that's right for you. They may or may not share experiences, but it's really important that there's openness, trust and confidentiality between the mentor and mentee. It's important as well that you don't see the mentor as the final destination. They may be the person to signpoint you to the next person, and it might even be that they signpost you to your next mentor. And it's an incredibly valuable experience, particularly at sort of transition points in your career. So I think some top tips is when you're about to embark on a new mentorship position, have a specific purpose in mind that you want for the mentorship, and so you can make it particularly meaningful. Take time to value the sessions and really invest in those. Prepare for your meetings, and because this is sort of time out where you get a time to think and reflect, and you're sort of creating your own bespoke learning program. And try to apply those principles in between. This is where you really learn how to navigate your own career. And it's really how you put the sort of the tasks into action in your day-to-day life where you'll start to see some progress. It's also time to be reflective of how your career is progressing, how things that you may want to change. And I think being honest with yourself as well as your mentor is really important part of your own personal development. And the other thing I'd say is, you can build a portfolio of mentors. There might be specific points where you have a specific mentor for one transition, but actually over time we will accumulate a group of people who will be in that mentorship role. So, sorry. So I think I think I may have, sorry, it's just slowed down a little bit. When you're thinking of approaching a mentor, just think of who in your network may be able to support you with different needs, and you might be able to identify future mentors outside those existing networks as well. And think of the types of relationships you might want. Do you want something more formal or informal? And just think about how you're going to whether you feel comfortable approaching someone, or you want someone to arrange that initial conversation. So focus very much on mentorship, because I think most people will be familiar with what the role of a supervisor or sponsor is, but really just to highlight, supervisors and sponsors are there to support career guidance. They're very much supporting you developing a research portfolio, a training plan, will be supporting developing new collaborations, may be involved in writing grants and publications, and will have some sort of scientific oversight of a research programme. But a mentor is someone who's outside that. It's not one of your collaborators, and someone who can take that almost helicopter view of what you're doing in your career to give those sort of insights into your own personal development. And the only thing I'd say is most of these roles take very much happen in addition to our day jobs, and individuals will be supporting many staff. So it's really important that you're organised, plan ahead, and give plenty of time for responses. And I think that it's your career and you do have to take control of that. And I think I'll leave it there. Thank you. I hope that was useful.
Yep, thank you, Professor Morgan, for a fantastic talk. So we'll leave the question and answers at the end of the session. So now I would like to invite Professor Hemant Pandit to deliver a talk on what is research sponsor or research advocate, because many of us potentially may not be aware of it. So I think it's really a key thing that we need to understand. Okay, so the floor is yours, Professor Pandit.
Yeah, thank you. I hope the slides will be shared in a minute. So they are not. Give me a minute, unless. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So then it's coming, the slides, I think. Let me know when you can see the slides. Give me a second. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just need to go into the slide presentation. Isn't it would? Oh, why am I struggling with this? Anyway, we'll try and do it this way. But so hi everyone, thank you, Yus, and most equally importantly, thank you and for giving an excellent overview. It was really comprehensive and it covered all the key points, including some aspects of sponsorship stroke research advocate. So my presentation is going to be shorter, probably talking mainly about the sponsorship and the differences between mentorship versus sponsorship, so that we have some time left for discussion. Now, before I go into that, I'm going to show you some pictures here. And I want you to think about in this pairings, which pairing is a mentor and which pairing is a sponsor. And I'll try and explain that to you later on, and we will have same pictures and maybe one or two additional to explain to you why that relationship is either a mentorship or a sponsorship. Okay. So I always, when I started in my role as a senior academic, I guess, I sort of thought to myself, what is a mentor? What is a sponsor? What do these words mean really? But what is clear to me, or what was very clear to me, is that for any successful researcher stroke employee, they usually need support in their professional journey. And this support could be across a spectrum. The support person, so the member who supports this colleague, the junior colleague, usually advocates for that person, helps make introductions to the right people, put your name forward to the most challenging and hopefully rewarding assignments, and then share their wisdom and knowledge with you. It is also well proven that employees tend to ascend a career ladder faster and contribute to the organization's success if they have either a mentor or a sponsor or both. At the same time, it is also shown that only 1 in 3 employees tend to have a mentor during their career. And although both mentorship and sponsorship offer critical support, as Anne said, mentorship aims to enrich an individual's skills and knowledge, while sponsorship is primarily geared towards accelerating the colleague's career trajectory within an organization. So mentor, therefore, is someone who can guide you on a holistic view, as Anne said, in a helicopter view. They are a trusted navigator who will give you insights, who will share their wisdom, influence personal and professional development at times. And it is a role which is well proven with significant advantages. And there are various initiatives set up, as Anne was saying, from NIHR, AMS. There are even nature awards, which are set up, as I've shown you the 2 pictures on the top. There are various master classes, and these tend to be usually one-to-one relationships. As against that, sponsor is someone who will provide active career support to you. And they will talk to you and they will be willing to leverage their influence. So, for example, what they may do is they may actively champion you as a junior colleague in various conversations. They will network actively to promote your career advancement and create or help create tailored opportunities so that you can go up the career ladder, and then promote effectively, they identify and promote their proteges within an organization. So again, a successful mentorship will give a generic overview and has already covered these bits. So I'm not going to go through those details, but typically they are given clear guidelines. Mentorship or mentors are given clear guidelines where they agree on goals, expectations, and listen to the needs of the trainee and meet at regular intervals. As against that, sponsorship is slightly bit, I would say, bit nebulous or bit hidden. So there is typically a senior member from the same academic field who will be the research advocate stroke and will have advocacy on behalf of the junior researcher. And they tend to contribute by making small but career making or career progressing actions for the junior researcher or junior academic, which then accumulate over time and help accelerate the careers of some or all the researchers with whom they work. So therefore, the process is not necessarily standardized, but it's a person-specific approach. And it tends to belong, the sponsorship tends to belong to a select group of people who are typically heads of department or faculty deans, influential researchers, or senior academics. Indeed, the sponsor also needs to be aware that the candidate's performance will reflect on the sponsor himself or herself. So there are certain benefits here to both of them, but at the same time, there are risks for the sponsor. And therefore, at times, they need to be careful. Now, some examples I have listed here. Introducing a junior colleague to established member, as Anna was mentioning, inviting, encouraging, and making sure a junior colleague contributes to a grant application, hopefully a successful one, including them in a conference panel, mentioning them in a faculty meeting, and actively supporting creating a suitable job which is tailored for that person's needs, which of course has to also mirror the departmental needs. One has to also be aware as a sponsor, I think, that it's a partially selfless act. Because as a sponsor, if I am sponsoring someone, I should be prepared to let go of that person so that that person can prosper in his or her own way, which may or may not benefit me. That person may decide to leave my organization, but my primary goal has to be to achieve maximum for that particular colleague or junior colleague who then may end up being my, how should I say, my work colleague, or may go elsewhere. So it should be considered that it is a partially selfless act. And as I said, it has a slightly bit more hidden process than a formal mentorship. Indeed, mentorship may help mentee find a sponsorship because mentorship need not be in the same department. Usually it isn't. It is more of a helicopter view, more of a holistic view. Now, finding sponsorship is another challenge, I guess, for many early and mid-career researchers. Now, universities typically focus on mentorship for minority groups because they know that it's intuitive, it is an appealing solution for EDI, and often it is an assumption that trainees from minority groups may need more mentoring. Well, that's not really true. And therefore also the university may at times look at it as a target or a matrix. But mentorship is equal or even advantaged to not only just underrepresented, but also to every other person. And what many a times people need is a sponsorship at the ECR or the mid-career level. So therefore one has to remember that one tends to seek out or support candidates who are similar to themselves. And then this can create a problem because then you are creating a status quo. So again, it has been demonstrated by various researchers that male junior researchers tend to be more aware of sponsorship and the tactics to access it. So some people may say that, well, you know what, I'll create in-depthness and deepen the trust with my sponsor so as to develop a successful sponsorship. So, I may take some of the work that the sponsor is doing, and also therefore the sponsor therefore has more free time and also will develop further trust. It is also proven that women may find it uneasy about receiving sponsorship. But one just has to work on it in an individual fashion. One has to see what they can do. This I'm talking about ECR or MCR, so as to secure a sponsor if they feel that that is what will benefit them. And these are the views if I'm looking at it as a sponsor. So more reflection for myself and senior members. Do we tend to identify ourselves with some juniors but not others? Do we create therefore different opportunities to interact informally with some but not with others? Why do we do that? And there tends to be unconscious bias in many of us, and we should try and minimize that. But at the same time, I don't think it will be completely negated. And also we have to think, are we benefiting the organization by being a sponsor, or are we perpetuating the status quo? We hope that a positive sponsorship will lead to a positive change in behavior and culture. And also we should also appreciate that both mentorship and sponsorship are equally important, and senior academics need to understand the difference between the two. So to summarize, this table will give you the differences between mentorship and sponsorship in terms of focus, when to seek mentorship versus sponsorship, which is, I suppose, a key area, what it benefits an individual, what the role involves, and then the interaction frequency and organizational benefit, I think, tends to vary depending upon the structure of the organization, the relationship, as well as each individual. And to get most out of a mentor or sponsor, I would suggest set clear expectations from the start, define the scope of the relationships, goals, and anticipated outcomes. Seek strategic alignment by considering skills, expertise, and career aspirations. So, of both parties, clearly the skills and expertise is more relevant to the mentor or the sponsor. One should always provide a clear roadmap, or at least have a clear roadmap or framework in their head, and then create a feedback loop, because one needs to make sure that in these relationships we are staying on track. Figure out what is working and what is not working, because you have to change the tack along the way. And do not make them, as Anne said earlier, it used to be a one-way street. It is not at all a one-way street. It is not just about giving guidance, but also receiving feedback. And map out a employee's career path together early on if one can. So that helps. And this fostering this relationship is a mutual commitment so that everybody can grow and excel together. And in fact, there are platforms available, softwares available. One can use these, which are commercially or sometimes freely available. Now, you may remember I had shown you some pictures at the beginning. So clearly, Barbara Walters and Oprah Winfrey is a mentor-mentee relationship. And this is what Oprah Winfrey said about Barbara Walters when she died. She was indeed a trailblazer. I did my very first television audition with her in mind. So she was the role model. And grateful that she was such a powerful and gracious role model, careful she has shown me the light. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates is another example. So Warren Buffett decided that he should mentor Bill Gates and encourage him to use money towards philanthropy. Last but not the least, between Harry Potter and Professor Dumbledore, I think that was a mentor-mentee relationship. As against that, let's think about sponsors. So again, Oprah Winfrey appears, but she worked with Dr. Phil McGraw completely differently. Dr. Phil rose to fame on appearances on Oprah Winfrey's show. So basically pushed him along in his career, helped him. And then she helped him launch his own program, actively attended, participated in that program, made sure that he was successful. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. I think Anne showed Paul's picture. So Paul Emery is OBE, CBE, is one of our most senior, with most accolades in our institute, internationally known. And one of his proteges is Kulveer. Now, Paul has tried very hard to develop Kulveer into what he is. And clearly, Paul has worked as a successful sponsor for Kulveer. And I'll like to end on myself. So as I did not explain my journey, and I think everybody has a unique individual journey. There are, that's probably a wrong way to say things, but there are many ways to skin a cat, isn't it? I did not follow the ACF, ACL program. It didn't exist. But I come from India. I came here in 1995, 2000, decided to go to Oxford, worked in my way up, became an associate professor in 2016 and then 2015, sorry. And then I was approached by University of Leeds, and I always say they gave me an offer that I couldn't refuse. Just happens that I got both the chairs, Oxford and Leeds, at the same time. And if I look back, the two colleagues who are in that picture, John Goodfellow and John O'Connor, I would call them as my mentors. They always gave me holistic view. But then David Murray was my sponsor. He encouraged me. He made sure that I got my career goal. And he was selfless, because at the end of all this, I decided to move away from Oxford and have my own career. I many a times used to joke to him, you know what, David, John and the two Johns were my mentors and you were my tormentor. But obviously I was joking. Anyway, more to questions. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Yus.
Okay, so thank you so much to both Professor Anne Morgan and Professor Hemant Pandit. So in particular, Professor Morgan, found your talks really interesting, especially explaining about the key values of mentorship, the relationship between mentor and mentees, and also how, top tips on how the mentee can, prepare themselves, for the mentor meeting relationship. And also Professor Pandit as well, but the differentiation between a sponsor and also the mentorship, which is a new concept, and also those sort of questions, thought-provoking questions. I think that's really key, really, for us, really. So I'd just like to emphasize that if you have any sort of more questions, can you please put on the chat, because we do have about 10 minutes to do Q&A. So I'll probably start with the mentor bits, if that's all right. So I'll probably direct this to Professor Morgan first. So we got a question here, is something about the buddy or peer-to-peer mentorship. So certainly, during, myself, when I did, when I was in NIHR doctoral and also clinical lectureship in West Yorkshire, so we do have buddy peer-to-peer mentorship, which I found, really useful and successful. So I think the question here is about, is there any training to support this peer-to-peer mentorship?
There was some training when I started it. I don't think the Academy of Medical Sciences run that scheme. It was a pilot, and it was when I was a clinician scientist. So the aim was to sort of almost get someone who was just that one step ahead of you in your career, who understood the differences. I mean, I think what worked really well is it was a north of England. So there was a whole, so it was, mine was rheumatology specific, so we had rheumatologists from Leeds, Manchester and Newcastle. Everyone had external PhD schemes, so they were externally funded PhDs, and it allowed them at those transition points to have discussions with each other about what was happening in different universities, and it sort of, so there was very little funding with it, and we quite often met up at meetings, or we would arrange to meet, and quite often would meet outside one of the institutions and have a very free-ranging chat. So yes, there was I suppose I had some training for how to deliver that type of mentorship, but I don't see it in very many places now. But I think it can be, it's really efficient for groups of PhD students to have that sort of support, because you'll find the more formal schemes tend to be more at postdoctoral level or when people have fellowships.
So Anne, while we're talking about the training just now, so I think we do have some middle career researcher as well in the room. So I'm just wondering, they are probably going to go on to become a group leader at some point as well. So we're talking about the mentors, and we're talking about the training for the buddy mentorship. How about the people who are going to become mentor in the future? I mean, is there any training for mentor, or are you just drawing from experience, you think?
So there is, if for the formal schemes, there's formal training for both mentors and mentees. So things like the Academy of Medical Sciences and the university schemes, there are formal. I think Hemant's wanting to come in on that.
I think there are a lot of opportunities for formal training, and so anytime you wish to apply for a mentorship program, they usually will provide you training. So I have had training from NIHR, from Academy of Medical Sciences, as well as from British Hip Society, because they said who wants to apply to be a mentor, and then they will provide you bespoke training. So if any of you are interested, I think you should. I don't know how many colleagues are there from outside Leeds. There must be few. So you should approach your organization. There will be some internal process available and funding available to encourage you to do that. It is important that you do it. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we got the second question. So I think both of you can answer, but I'll probably direct to Hemant first, if that's all right. So do you have any advice for developing mentorship or sponsorship across professional disciplines where your path may not cross naturally? For example, so people are, because we got a lot of allied healthcare professionals around here in the room as well, and then usually the directors and things that more like medics. So how do so can you give advice on that?
So maybe I will also need input from Anne, and I may even ask Denise. I mean, Denise is very well established in her own career. She's really a senior academic. So if I miss something, Denise, do suggest. I think what happens is, I'll just give an example. So I am an NIHR mentor. So what happens is that they open up the mentorship program and they ask for applications. And so anybody can apply. There you are asked to provide detailed information of what career stage you are, why you want to join the program as a mentee, what you are looking for your mentor, and then you take it from there. So like that, then they match the mentor and mentee, and I get choice. So I will be sent anywhere between 3 to 5 mentee applications, and I will say, well, you have my expertise on your records, you see what works. So one of my mentees was a vascular surgeon. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. One other mentee was a respiratory physician who is an associate professor. So they will partly do the matching, partly I can do. And also what I make sure is that when I meet first time the mentee, I say, this is my expertise. This is what I can help you with. If you think this is not suitable for you, please let me know and we can stop here. So I think it's a mutual process. Now, this is a formal way. At the same time, there are informal ways. So when I was doing my DPhil in Oxford, not only I had 3 supervisors, but I had a mentor who was allocated to me, who had nothing to do as such with my PhD project. But his main aim was to make sure that my well-being was looked after. I was for going in the direction that would help me complete my PhD in a successful and a timely manner. And he had no other interest. So there are some universities which will also have their internal scheme, but I may have missed quite a few points. Over to Anne and Denise if they want to chip in. Thank you.
So I think one thing I'd add about for PhD students is don't forget your postgraduate research so your sort of postgraduate research tutor, because they although they're part of that formal process, they are someone who's completely independent who you can go to, and they will also have a wealth of knowledge of people who can take on that role. I think it's really important for someone to be at least in a different specialty, if not in a different discipline. I think for most it's matched. So for the Academy of Medical Sciences, it is someone who has a fellowship of the Academy of Medical Sciences, and you can look through the list of fellows, or they will match to an NIHR senior investigator. So, and those people with fellowships and senior investigator roles are, you can go and you can have a look at that. Informal roles may just develop organically, as I said with myself. You know, you can be in a sponsorship type role, and you can meet people who aren't necessarily in your specialty who will give you support along the way. And those, you know, is it a sponsor? If it's the same organization, is it a mentor? And I think as you get more senior, some of those roles are blurred.
Brilliant. Denise, I'm just wondering whether, do you have any thoughts? Sorry, I'm just picking you. Whether, do you have any thought from your side?
No, I think I've had mentorship training, and the mentorship that I give and I receive actually is much more informal. But I think a key thing is understanding what you want from your mentor, so that the mentor understands what to give. So some relationships I have which are very much directed about, you know, you need to go and contact this person or contact that person, or either in email introductions or that kind of thing. But others are very much listening for that, the kind of emotional health, and so completely supporting that individual. And your question, Ben, is I don't think it's about the profession really. I think it's about the person, and what suits you and what you need from it.
I think the thing I'd add is don't necessarily go for someone who's like yourself. And so, you know, actually having someone who doesn't have the same personality type as yourself may actually be more valuable. And for, I guess, for women, don't necessarily look for other women. They may be able to give you some advice about how they navigated their careers, but sometimes, you know, if, you know, other women can also have this perception of glass ceilings, and actually having someone with a completely different personality type might be what you actually need. Someone who thinks about things in a different way can be really enlightening sometimes in a mentorship agreement. So don't just try and you know, it depends what you need at different times. As you can see, might be partly who was there at the time, but all my mentors were men of very different personality types.
Okay, so we've already got in the yep.
Sorry, just an additional there. In today's world, we are doing today. Most of the meetings are online, and I think we miss a lot of opportunities. Especially in a mentor-mentee relationship, where face-to-face meetings are zillion times better. Okay, you will learn a lot about the other person, mannerisms, how to react, approach, etc. And therefore, I would encourage both mentor and mentee that at least some of the meetings should be face-to-face.
I completely agree. There's something about that trip to London or trip to Edinburgh or wherever that you take time out, and actually that time traveling is invaluable for reflections.
Yeah, and also for people who are applying for fellowships, you can also put this on your budget as well for training budget. So just wondering regarding to, so I've probably got two more questions before we close the session. So one is, like you mentioned, so, you know, the mentorship can change with times, and also how, you know, trajectory of your career. So sometimes, so do you have any sort of, can you share your experience about how potentially to say goodbye to a mentor? Sometimes that's quite hard when you feel like you need a different mentor to, to progress a different level. And how do you go about that?
Well, with formal mentorship, it tends to be for a defined amount of time. So, I think you will do it for the duration of a fellowship, and then there'll be an agreement. Sometimes, you know, there's an agreement that if there's you know, so for me, I started my mentorship agreement with Mark Walport, where, you know, it was just before he took up his role at the Wellcome Trust. There was an agreement that if I applied for major Wellcome Trust funding, there was then a conflict of interest, and at that point we would end that mentorship arrangement, because then there was a conflict of interest. And so, you know, I think I think for formal, that it does tend to be time limited. I don't know what others think.
I think a formal mentor-mentee relationship may end, but an informal mentor-mentor relationship does not need to end. You know, end of the day, I still will spend some time with my Oxford seniors, because I still learn from them, even if I have been a mentor for quite some time. And the pearls of wisdom they will give me, because they have seen it from a you know, both of us want the best out of me. So they will still tell me, and they have become friends rather than mentors. Now, I'm not saying that holds true for every mentor-mentee relationship. Some of them are time specific, like Anne said, but some of them go far beyond that. So I think you have to decide what is best for you.
So we just got already as well one question. So in terms of so Professor Pandit, you know, on your hat as a sponsor. So for those, you know, early career researchers and also the middle career researchers, and particularly potentially if they are from like in a different, you know, background, like, you know, like healthcare professionals and so forth, or clinicians potentially, do you think would it be helpful for these trainees to arrange, you know, maybe like an annual or something, a review with the sponsor, just to sort of, you know, explain, you know, their performance and their trajectory and their aspiration? Or do you think it, you know, it's more of the group leaders' responsibility actually just to help those sort of promotion, you know, to the sponsors?
I think it is both ways. It is all. I always am a firm believer that you should you control your own destiny, at least to a large extent. And if you sit on your laurels, it is really difficult for somebody else to take that. They may, but they may not take the initiative. Okay? And what I tend to do is, any trainee who starts with me, I would have this chat at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, to see during their training period what I want to, out of them, how they will demonstrate their, you know, what is it that I'm looking for? What do they want from me? That will be both practical skills, it will be softer skills. Here we're talking about softer skills. And then I will update them as to, it has to be constructive criticism at times, but it should be both ways. So, you know, I will always ask the trainee as well, please tell me what I didn't do correctly for you, so that I can improve the next time, and I do my best then to improve. But coming back to your question, clearly, I think a trainee, a junior member of that relationship should take the initiative, not on day one, but should take the initiative to say, I would like to sit down with you. This is what I'm looking for. Is it something? And the other person may say, you know what, I'm not necessarily your sponsor. I don't think that will work for you. You know, it might be somebody else, but people will encourage you. Please, Anne and Denise, do chip in, because I may have missed things.
Don't think I've got anything to add.
Okay, so fantastic. So we're gonna draw our meeting to end. So before we close the session, I'd just like to bring back again our QR code. So please, so thank you so much for attending the session live today, and also for those who also gonna catch up online after the meeting.